Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. This was certainly an eventful year. A year when a lot of tethers, bootlicks, and professional white society butt-kissers, people who thought they had power, who had been getting away with things, found themselves on the outs. Joy Taylor got put on Front Street by a former colleague who confirmed what everybody was already saying about her. Emmanuel Acho also got his last bowl of Jollof at Fox Sports' expense. That goofy smiling moron made a clown of himself for years, and what did it get him? A humiliating exit. And speaking of humiliation, Joy Reid got canned by MSNBC. They only kept her around as their resident Negro whisperer, but these white media companies and their multinational parent companies are trying to get in good with Trump in the hopes of favorable treatment during what will be an orgy of mergers and acquisitions and companies getting sold off like a fire sale. The Iron Lady of Tethers was reduced to tears because she knows she's going to wind up like Goldie Taylor and Melissa Harris von Steubenberg round the world in 80 Days Lacewell Perry. All her years of attacking the black grassroots, lying about us and calling us Russian bots, she did the most to carry water for white power and to demonize us. All those lies, all for nothing. And who did they get to replace Joy Reid? Eugene Daniels, whose only qualification seems to be that he really loves fingernail polish and lip gloss. This guy blathers and chatters as if he's got runaway Tourette's. He's the master of talking a lot and saying absolutely nothing. But his getting picked by MSNBC to be her replacement shows that for the white media, they're not scared of firing any of these tools. Tiffany Cross thought that there would be outrage over her firing. Even Joy Reid barely said a word about it. Nobody sticks up for tools. They just get used and then discarded. And speaking of discarded, Fat Joe lost what little street cred he pretended to have. He didn't get to host the BET Awards, and that makes sense. BET has even less credibility with the black community than Fat Joe does. Rumors swirled about whether the Obamas were getting divorced or not, and there's more rumors about which one of them would be first to come out of the closet. A lot of Asians have been pushing the lie that black people are attacking Asians, and this year those lies were exposed. In fact, Asians wound up being on the receiving end of attacks from the white right, from Vivek Ramaswamy to Diane Yap to Dinesh D'Souza to the Honda plant raided by ICE. Model minority was just a fancy way of saying tools of white power. Well, this year, these racists have gone about breaking their tools. Shannon Sharpe's star was on the rise when he had his mega-viral interview with Cat Williams, but this year he's crashed back down to earth, getting sued by an OnlyFans thought that he was doing race play with. It just goes to show whether these guys are in professional sports or quote-unquote retired, these big black athletes never seem to get any smarter. The little skank he was slumming with was able to squeeze him for an out-of-court settlement and also got him fired from ESPN. When you practice being a bedbuck, you can't be surprised when you wind up getting screwed. America's black leaders, who are immigrants by and large, went overboard in their attempts to show contempt for the black community by totally ignoring us and showing they're willing to go to jail for illegal immigrants. People who aren't even citizens, people who can't even vote for them. Wes Moore became governor of Maryland, and his first act was to say that reparations aren't necessary because, well, his being governor is reparations. And then he got humiliated a few months later when his own state legislature decided to override him on that issue. And not one black politician of any note called him out because they're on the same page. Tulsa's so-called mayor pulled a similar stunt. He claims that a housing voucher scam should be considered reparations, even though everyone's going to be eligible for it. These clowns keep doing the gaslighting, and they're not even doing it subtly. White power has spent untold millions to select a gang of sellouts and suck-ups to fund their campaigns, put them in office, and then use their white media monopoly to claim that these guys are legitimate black leaders. Well, this year the scumbags are getting exposed. The agenda for 2026? Start the process of having these bastards replaced. It's also been a year of compensatory turnaround. Rodney Hinton was arrested for allegedly hitting police with his car after his son was gunned down by the cops. He received support from the public for his legal defense, which made the corrupt DA there so angry that he wanted a law to be passed to prohibit defendants from crowdfunding their legal defense, but only in cases where they're charged with harming someone in law enforcement. In Ron DeSantis' Florida, Elijah Mackey, a black Checkers employee, was attacked by a white man, which resulted in the man's death. All because this white customer didn't get enough mayonnaise. I'm not making that up. That's what actually happened. There's a stereotype about the dominant society loving mayo more than the breath of life. Well, frankly, I don't know where anyone would get an idea like that. Essence Fest was officially exposed as Tether Fest. All the janky, underhanded scamming that these tethers do in their home countries, they brought it to New Orleans with disastrous results. Essence's brand, such as it was, has been permanently tarnished, and the company's tether leadership was exposed to the point that the tether who was the face of it, Caroline Wanga, was forced to resign. This is a woman who boasted that her family were collaborators in the East African slave trade. Just goes to show how traders are. The times may change, but these people don't. Some things are just in the blood, I suppose. Kamala Harris had already been testing the waters to see if she could make another abortive run at the presidency because, hey, third time's the charm, right? And Jasmine Crockett has stopped putting on public spectacles for the camera in Congress so she can put on public spectacles running for the Senate. The white media was already giving her hints back in August that they're not going to be backing her with propaganda pieces. And just to make sure she got the message, The Atlantic put out a piece that portrayed her as, well, a narcissistic, unlikable, self-serving social climber who's not really interested in anything other than herself. Well, at least the white media actually told the truth for once. People have already heard about how the white rights puppets like Tim Fool and others were receiving secret money from the Russians, which proved that these guys were just whores for whoever would pay them. But this year, we got confirmation that the white leftist podcasters have been doing the same thing. People like David Pakman and others have been getting money from dark money groups to attack the Democratic leadership's opponents and to steer the online conversation away from anything Democrats don't want focused on, like the Democrats' refusal to take on reparations, or to punish the thugs in blue, or to stop the institutional investors who caused the affordability crisis. People have long already known that the entire reason certain people on the left and the right get millionaires and billionaires to sponsor them so easily, the entire reason that places like YouTube promote certain channels and shadow ban others like the black media, is entirely because they're on the take. Everyone knows this. It's useful to get confirmation because it makes it where it's no longer a subject of dispute. But make no mistake, nobody was fooled. That these leftist puppets were being paid to say, or rather not say certain things, was the worst kept secret in town. And it also confirmed for you that the black media is 100% legit. There was absolutely no chance that I or any of the other thought leaders of the black media would wind up on any of those lists because white power isn't about to pay anyone to spread our message, a message that directly threatens white power and empowers black people. We've been out here for years, in my case, nearly 2 decades. During that time, we've had a lot of shills, agents, ops, COINTELPRO, and just plain idiots claim that I was on the take for someone. Family, if that was the case, don't you think I would have had a channel with millions of viewers? Don't you think I would have a personal studio somewhere paid for by millionaire sugar daddies? In 18 years, don't you think that somebody would have said, yep, we got Professor Black Truth on the payroll? Don't you think some politician or one of their staffers would say, yeah, that Professor Black Truth guy was at a private dinner for so-and-so at such and such a place. He's part of some political operation or other. See, this is why I tell you that I'm very reluctant to endorse people or mention people, and the reason is if someone's on the level, they don't need my endorsement or support because they're too busy doing the work. And how do you tell the real from the phony? Time. Time reveals all. If someone is ops, which most of these people are, then at some point they have to get to the work of trying to mislead you. They can't just get out here and pretend to talk like us forever. Sooner or later, they gotta start doing what white power paid them to do. That's why even the black shills who only use a little bit of our verbiage, a little of our rhetoric, they can't afford to go full B1 because our message is too dangerous to their white paymasters. To gain your confidence would require them to reinforce a message that of a necessity requires their white paymasters to be brought down. This is your confirmation that the black media is who and what we say we are, the only real opposition to the status quo. We're trying to bring down white supremacy. Everyone else, including these black shills like Roly Poly, the Shade Room, and other sock puppet groups, are just trying to finesse a comfortable place for themselves under white supremacy. The lesson to be taken away from these Democrat shill podcasters getting exposed is that if you want to know who truly believes what they're saying as opposed to who's being paid to say something, follow the money. Well, we had to get to it sooner or later. Charlie Kirk's death served to reveal that the white right is far more fractured and corrupt than people believed. They lie about everything, mostly black people, but they lie to themselves all the time. When Kirk got murked, the white right used their money to try to manufacture a phony PR campaign to try to tell the public that he was some sort of folk hero. But that was never going to work because the same white right were the very ones who created a social environment so polarized and partisan that nobody's going to get over that bar in the current climate. And in order for someone to do that, they would have to be generally acceptable to a majority of Americans. No amount of carpet bombing the public with right-wing propaganda will fool a majority into believing Charlie Kirk was anything other than an anti-black race grifter. And like the Tim Fools and David Pakmans, Charlie Kirk was also an invention of white billionaire money. He was their sock puppet, and people knew it. But there's no honor among thieves. The white right's propaganda parade to try to lionize him was interrupted by white right mouthpieces like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Nick Fuentes, who either cast aspersions on Turning Point USA or in some cases insinuated that people inside the organization may well have had it in for Kirk, or in the case of Nick Fuentes, just said Charlie Kirk was on the take for Israel and wasn't worthy of respect. And those are just the high-profile white right-wing nuts. In the age of the social influencer, there's been a bunch of teenagers and 20-somethings who saw how Kirk got filthy rich being the young face of conservatism, even though he was in his 30s. So a number of nobodies and half-wits came out of the woodwork trying to take Kirk's shtick of ambushing places where black people gather, from HBCUs to black churches, and called themselves demanding that people debate them. None of these creeps has gained any traction because none of them has any real grassroots support, not even among the white right. Charlie Kirk was not a social phenomenon. He was an astroturf puppet created, propped up, and pushed on college campuses by billionaires who have no clue that there's a reason young people won't listen to them. Kirk himself knew that he was denying reality and had to change his rhetoric near the end, and the private communications that have come to light show that he didn't even believe the crap he was saying. All these guys do is careen from one racist display to the next, swing from one pretend victory to the next. All they know how to do is performative extremism and phony white outrage, and you can't build a broad-based movement on that. The white right has tried to manufacture their own answer to the civil rights movement. They've been trying it for decades, but they've always failed because they refuse to accept the reality that black people's history and demands are based in fact. In their minds, they want to think that if they just claim to be civil rights this or claim to be victims that, then that means they've neutralized black people's demands. But reality doesn't work like that. People easily see right through the white right's pathetic attempts to play phony victim. They understand that it's rooted in corruption, and people can tell the difference. All the white right's denials of injustice towards black people may make them feel better, but it doesn't change that our movements are based in justice and reality, and theirs aren't. Even with billionaires pouring millions of dollars into these propaganda campaigns, all they've managed to do is create cults of personality at best. That's what Charlie Kirk and even Donald Trump are. This is why when Kirk was killed, there's nothing to follow him. Because his was a false movement. There's no guiding ideology, no core beliefs, and no morality. Turning Points USA is just a bunch of opportunistic liars doing a race grift for some white dark money donors. That's it. They have no principles because their so-called movement wasn't necessary. It's not something that needs to exist. It's just an ethno-political lie agreed upon. You can give it money, but nothing can give it legitimacy. And the people who pretend to be on board with this, they know it's a scam. That's why they had no problem turning on each other so quickly. And even the sycophants and suck-ups in the red states who thought that they were insulated from voter backlash are finding out otherwise. The now former superintendent of Oklahoma schools thought that he would ride the wave of Charlie Kirk's support to the top, saying that he would force every high school in the state to establish a Turning Points chapter whether they wanted to or not, only to find out the wave was barely a ripple, and now that moron was forced to resign in disgrace. Talk about failing to read the room. This is what happens when you let white power lull you into living in a bubble. But Kirk's death showed that the white right is just a gang of opportunists who have whored themselves to big money, and that these people were basically only a hair's breadth away from turning cannibalistic, and now it's going down. Kendrick Lamar said you can't fake influence, which was what the billionaires who created Charlie Kirk tried to do, and you know what? You also can't fake integrity either, which is what the infighting by the white right is showing. And speaking of billionaires trying to buy influence, Larry Ellison sent his Nepo baby David to blow the family fortune buying up legacy white media companies. And just to show what kind of operation they intend to run, they gave millions of dollars to professional race baiter and former New York Times hack Barry Weiss and made her the head of CBS News. A woman who has almost no experience in media other than to write a few forgettable and meaningless hack pieces for the Times, and who has absolutely no experience in network news other than being the occasional guest on some news panel every blue moon, which proves she only got called because her agent nagged this or that network until they put her on, or because they were really tapped for guests and she was the best they could do. Her so-called free press blog mysteriously always had a ready supply of millions of dollars bankrolled by huge donors, and she got the money so easy, and for what? All she did was platform anti-black racists, but under white supremacy, that's what pays. Letitia James got indicted, then the charges got dropped, and then there were 2 more attempts to get a grand jury to re-indict her, and both of them have failed, so the Orange Man is 0 for 3 on that one. At last report, the judge has not dismissed the charges with prejudice, which means that Trump can have his DOJ make a 4th attempt at indicting her. Before I say this next part, I will preface it by saying there's no good guys in this fight. I'm no admirer of Letitia James, in case you hadn't noticed, and I wouldn't mind seeing her do the perp walk, though I do have to say it's been very entertaining watching the white right go into hysterics because the grand jury refused to indict her twice in a row. These are the same scum who claim that if a grand jury doesn't indict a cop even once, well, that proves that the charges were totally false from the jump and that they should be able to sue because clearly they were innocent, right? It's always delightful to see these inbred pieces of trash forced to have to eat their own words, over and over. But by far the story of the year is the Orange Man's Revenge Tour. He came in like a bull in a china shop, but not even the flunkies and toadies he had around him were safe from the wrath. Vivek Ramaswamy was the first to get canned. He barely lasted 48 hours before he got shown the door. Elon Musk, America's favorite apartheid reject, gave a Nazi salute at the RNC, and he made it a point to bring his brood and his brats to the Oval Office for his Doge pet project. But it turned out one of the wasteful government jobs Trump wound up eliminating was Musk's. Not only did Musk wind up with egg on his face figuratively, but he also wound up with a black eye, literally. Well, at least now Morgan Freeman has more free time to kiss Musk's racist rump. Speaking of Doge, 2 of the racist twerps from that organization got caught up in an alleged carjacking in D.C., which was questionable from the very start. And in the end, the perhaps last honest judge inside the Beltway refused to be intimidated and followed the law and white legal precedent and let the teens who had been accused go. Because that's what the white case law on this kind of offense has always been. There was the predictable phony outrage by the white right over this because they know the only people who are supposed to be able to escape prosecution is them. ICE has been carrying out raids, and although they are far more modest than whatever the white right media may try to claim, even these modest efforts have curtailed illegal crossings of the border, and a lot of anti-black immigrants have been getting deported. People who brag that they were so much more successful than black Americans, well, now they're successful back in their home countries. Trump has shown that from the Asians to the Hispanics to the Somalians, everyone can get it. That is, everyone except for foundational black Americans. This has led to something unprecedented. Immigrants demanding that black Americans put on the cape for them, demanding it, trying to order us to do it, and being furious that we've told them we won't. All of the decades of people claiming that they were a model minority or claiming that they were the good blacks, well, it's being put to the test. And as we've always said, white power loves a cruel prank, especially one that takes a long time to pay off, and this one was decades in the making. All of those people who were talking about how successful they were, how accomplished they were, how educated they were, oh, we don't commit crimes, etc., now they're having the same white supremacists who they thought were their buddies, telling everybody these people don't work, they're not educated, and they do nothing but commit crimes. And these immigrant groups, having spent decades repeating all of white power's lines, find themselves unable to even speak in their own defense. Because after all, how can you spend 70 years saying that there's no racism in America? Not really. Racism's not really a problem. It's just that these black Americans don't want to work. How can you spend decade after decade, generation after generation, claiming that there is no racism, and then when you start getting deported, your defense is, it's racist? There's an old saying that adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. And for these immigrant groups, they've been getting the ethical face peel from hell. Trump's legislative brinksmanship in the Congress led to what's been called snappocalypse, when millions of single mothers and others found themselves without EBT money for Thanksgiving. GQ in Britain named Cynthia Erivo their Man of the Year. Just goes to show these clowns wouldn't know a man if Jim Brown himself rose from his grave and kicked them in their non-existent gonads. And speaking of manly females, Marjorie Greene finally had her falling out with the Orange Man, and while the Epstein files was the catalyst for it, it's also true she's been hoping to go for higher office herself, no matter what she may say to 60 Minutes. I'm sure she thought her shameless butt-kissing to Trump would result in her getting a cabinet position when he was re-elected. After all, she's from Georgia, which Trump failed to carry in 2020, but did manage to carry last year, and I'm sure that Greene felt like she had more than a little to do with that. But apparently Trump felt otherwise. He didn't offer her anything, no position in his administration whatsoever. So I think that's when Greene began to think that maybe she should start testing how faithful the white right is to the Orange Man. Epstein was merely the wedge she used to drive a divide among the base. It was an extremely risky gamble, but it paid off. She understood that the white right base doesn't like Jews, and they're also paranoid about someone harming white children, unless it's a white classmate who does it with an assault rifle on campus. Trump was clearly worried about the Epstein files, and this became her moment to differentiate herself from him and gain credibility with the MAGA base by attacking something that Trump couldn't afford to defend. Jasmine Crockett called Greene a bleach blonde, bad-built, butch-body bimbo. Well, I can't really argue with that, so mark your calendars. Jasmine Crockett actually said something factually true, but it's also true that Greene has better political savvy than Crockett does. Her instincts are certainly superior in this regard, and the chances of Greene becoming a vice presidential running mate are far higher than those of Jasmine Crockett becoming, well, anything after she leaves Congress. This year, there was finally some brief attention given to a subject that's important to me, and that's black health care, in this case specifically the black maternal and infant mortality rates. Unfortunately, it's a subject that not even enough black people care about, and that's the reason why it's such a huge problem for us. There were 2 back-to-back stories of black mothers who were on camera with white hospital personnel refusing to admit them to deliver their babies. Both women wound up giving birth mere moments later. All this is happening while trash like Wes Moore preen for the cameras, while empty suit do-nothings like Hakeem Jeffries repeat the same stale talking points about voting rights, and while idiots like Jasmine Crockett are MIA on this issue even though she is a black woman. Not one of these black misleaders anywhere has said a word about prosecuting these hospitals or passing laws to make it straightforward for black mothers and their families to sue, and that if a hospital has repeated instances of black mothers being denied health care, or the black mother or their baby consistently die while under their so-called care, then those hospitals will be stripped of funding, they'll also be taken over by the state, and people will be prosecuted. They'll be put in prison. The same way that police departments can become subject to being taken over by the feds if they consistently fail to uphold certain standards, the exact same thing should be done with these so-called hospitals. You do that, and you'll find that suddenly the black maternal and infant mortality rates plummet. But that would require actual black leaders to pass policy like that, and what we have are white power's puppets. Now, these issues could be forced into the political discourse, but that would require black people to actually take a sharp and aggressive interest in it. Instead of people deciding that this is the kind of thing that they're not really interested in and that they'd rather hear about something else, they decide to actually focus on this. We can't continue to have black people practicing not caring about this issue until they or their loved ones are the ones actually in one of these death chambers, because by then, it's too late. Viola Ford Fletcher, one of the last survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre, passed. She was a living monument to the resilience and endurance of our people. There's an old saying that it is to the living we owe our respects, but to the dead we owe only the truth. Viola Ford Fletcher took that literally, making sure to write an autobiography that included the truth about what happened to her and the black residents of Tulsa. Viola Ford Fletcher literally fought until her dying breath. The other surviving members of that massacre are also still fighting, and we can do no less. And in New York City, it was the end of an era. Officer Eric Adams of the NYPD. Oh, say it ain't so, the buck-toothed worm who used to fester in the Big Apple is now being sent packing. But of course we all saw this one coming. This was the guy who was starting off his entire political careers talking about, what about black-on-black crime? And before it's all over, he was pathetically reduced to pointing to white reporters and going, hey, why'd you ask me that question? You only asked me that because I was black. That's what these bootlicks always try to do. They always try to be the deracinated post-racial Negro. And that's how they suck up to white power. Oh, I'm not going to be causing you no problems, massa. And as soon as massa shows, well, massa is going to cause you some problems, all of a sudden, they rediscover that racism exists? Yeah, but only for the moment. This is what I'm talking about when I say that you got these black celebrities who have a dysfunctional relationship with their own blackness. Being black and racism, in their minds, these are things that only exist at the personal level for themselves. It certainly doesn't exist at the group level for other black people. Eric Adams did everything that he could to ingratiate himself to the white powers that be. He brought in a suspected tether to be his stop and frisk czar is what she basically was, but she didn't last long, and like the rest of Eric Adams' ideas, it only got worse from there. He called himself trying to demand that everybody return back to work in the city center because you need to support all of those jobs and businesses in the city core, and then as soon as people started doing that, he immediately announced that they needed to start taxing people for entering the city core. It's all about squeezing the residents for as much money as they could get. And it would be one thing if the people of New York were actually getting value for their dollar, but with Officer Eric Adams of the NYPD on the job, grift, graft, and corruption was the order of the day. He wound up getting himself indicted by the feds for taking money, but that's okay. The orange man went ahead and bailed him out on that one. And in return, what did Officer Eric Adams do? He thought to himself that he was going to hold on to his job because after all, he had been bashing black people and sucking up to white power, and surely they wouldn't throw him overboard. Well, it turned out surely he was wrong. And what is the buck-toothed flatfoot going to do now that he's no longer mayor? Well, at this point, there's only about 2 occupations that he's actually qualified for. He could either become a security guard or a shoeshine boy. Zoran Mandani was elected mayor of New York, no surprise. His supporters cheered, as did the empty talking heads on the online left. I had told you this man would flip like IHOP once he got elected. I told you that he had been softening his rhetoric almost from the very beginning. I also told you that if this man was truly a genuine threat to white power, they would have gone at him far harder than they did. Even the corners of the white media that were taking pot shots at him weren't giving it the old college try. They were using him to take the political temperature of the voters in one of their key cities, and they're seeing that the mood is souring against the capitalist class, which is to say the American oligarchs. But Mondani is already making nice with them, having made a beeline straight for the White House so he could shake hands with one of the very billionaires that he claimed he was going to fight against. Well, for those people on YouTube who were singing this guy's praises, I hate to say I told you so, but my job as part of the black media isn't to make you feel better about a bad situation. My job is to make sure you have accurate information for your survival and empowerment, and to tell you what's coming before it gets here. My morning briefings aren't meant to make you happy. They're meant to keep you ahead of the curve. And to end the year, Trump went full prejudiced uncle from Thanksgiving in a profane rant against Somalians. Now, notice I said prejudiced, not racist. The Somalians have spent nearly a century in this country saying they're not black. They've also been ready to take your head off if you called them black, and they made extra sure to say that they were better than foundational black Americans, and were not allied with, connected to, or on our side in any shape, form, or fashion. They also made it a point to say that basically racism didn't exist, especially not from the countries they were in. Well, everybody's dark-skinned where we are, and when we came to the U.S., we didn't notice any racism. They thought they were getting in good with white supremacy at our expense. All of that denying racism, all of that taking shots at foundational black Americans and denigrating us every chance they got, they really thought they ate with that one. But the only thing they're eating now are their words. Trump called them garbage, said they were all scammers, all criminals, and he wanted them all out. And they sound ridiculous trying to say that Trump is racist because he never called them black, and that's something Trump and the Somalians have in common. Neither one of them calls Somalians black. And these pathetic attempts by Somalian politicians to rebrand themselves won't work, not just because white society already knows these guys don't identify as black, but also because the FBA community isn't going to stick up for them. Now, it needs to be said, I am fully aware that there's on-code Somalians, as there are on-code black folks from all over the diaspora. I've been contacted by them, by the way, and I've seen them occasionally speak up online. I acknowledge that, and they should be mentioned. And I think it's a damn shame that although their numbers are few, they've wound up in the same mess as these others. But the truth is, the Somalians themselves laid the groundwork for all this. They brought the same tribalism and infighting and clan warfare they practiced in Somalia here. And they're finding out the hard way, this isn't Somalia. All of these decades running around basically telling everybody that they don't believe in racism, only to find out the racists certainly believe in them. Your world said that America was founded by thieves, slaves, and opportunists, and the immigrants are the opportunists. They thought to themselves the white supremacy was going to take care of them, and what they're finding out the hard way is it won't. The black media has said it for decades now. The only safe place under white supremacy is fighting it. Donald Trump began a massive PR campaign to ingratiate himself with the white right by having white Dutch occupiers from that country brought to the U.S. And when South Africa's so-called president came to visit, he didn't even say a word on behalf of his own people. And the same thing went for the president of Somalia, asking him, what are you going to be doing about Donald Trump calling your people garbage and saying he's going to kick all of them out, and instead just saying, well, it's best to talk about something else. Yeah, nice to see that his policy regarding his people is the same abroad as it is at home, to just ignore them. And this is one of the most significant developments not just of 2025, but of the last 65 years. The Tethers had thought to themselves that they were going to be climbing the ladder over black people's dead bodies. They thought to themselves that they were going to be white supremacist adjacent. And what they're finding out is all of the lies, all of the denigration, all the backstabbing was all for nothing. They empowered the very people who are now cracking their heads. And what they think to themselves is, well, we're just going to lie low. The white media is going to cover for us. They're not going to out too many of us. Well, they're not the ones who have the say in that. The black media does. What's going on right now is we're getting our house in order. And part of getting your house in order is to make sure you don't have any freeloaders running around. That's what's happening here. The people who want to find themselves a comfortable place under white supremacy, they're on the hot seat now, but they put themselves in it. They don't have any allies in the FBA community. All they have are the disaffected millions who they spent the last 65 years creating. All of the insults that Trump made against them are the exact same insults that they've leveled against us. They've spent generation after generation telling us repeatedly that they didn't want anything to do with us. They were better than us. They wanted us to leave them alone, not that we were trying to get close to them. Well, now they see exactly what alone looks like. This year, of course, had many more instances and events that are worth commenting on, but for the most part, that's the broad strokes of it. This is the 1000th moment of truth. In objective terms, it's not significant. You don't see even the white media making it a point to say, this is our 1000th broadcast. I actually agree with them on that. We're doing the work, not trying to keep score. But it does have value that we've gotten this far, and make no mistake, when I say we, that means you. It sounds cliche, perhaps, but you go and talk to any content creator who has an appreciable number of people listening to them, and they'll tell you the exact same thing. You can't do this if it's just a vanity project. You certainly can't do it for very long. You would be talking to the wind, and that doesn't get you far. It was 4 years ago that I made the decision to change what I had been doing for the previous 15 years. Instead of making 2, maybe 3 videos a week, I decided to start doing 6 a week. And I remember that there were a number of people who said, Professor Truth, make sure that you pace yourself. You want to be careful not to burn yourself out, etc., etc. And I do appreciate the concern. It's certainly been a dramatic change of pace, but I didn't expect it to be any other way. My motivations for having made this change ran the gamut, everything from not being quite satisfied with my own level of output to even just basic considerations of mortality. When you get to a certain age, that does come into consideration. As the old saying goes, the prospect of death concentrates the mind wonderfully, and one thing that bothered me was whether I had said everything that I thought I wanted to say. And the answer was, I wasn't sure. So that's the reason why I made the change to 6 days a week. At the very least, I'm going to get a lot out, if not everything. But there was also a second motivator I had that was equal to the first. I'm a morning person. Typically, I'm up about 5 a.m. every morning. That's basically been the norm for me my entire life. And just like the rest of you, whether I'm at home or on a commute or taking a break, I would be looking for something informative to start my day with, something from a perspective that would be relevant and affirming to me as a black person. In the past, I would try to listen to the so-called news stations owned by the white media, and whether it be the local AM hate radio right-wing toilet or the FM stations that had on the likes of Tom Joyner, I couldn't help but notice that even things like NPR, the left-wing toilet that is, I was disgusted that they ignored what was important to me. And also they made it a point to take shots at black people like myself every chance they got. The content that came from white personalities was insulting and disrespectful, and the stuff that came from black personalities was contemptible and dim-witted. And I know you feel the exact same way. Like you, my brain doesn't have an off switch. I look for intelligent discourse. That's what I'm attracted to. And that being the case, these white media outlets and their Negro surrogates didn't have anything for me, and hence I had no interest in them. And I had the suspicion that I wasn't alone either. So I made up my mind that I would do the kind of content that I wanted to hear in the morning. I made sure that it would post early, 7 a.m. as opposed to posting at night. Much of what I cover has to do with the news of the day, but the majority of it has to do with issues and ideas. As the old saying goes, the wise talk about ideas, the smart talk about events, and fools talk about other people. As I've taught you, most people have been brainwashed by the white media. They promote themselves as being the place to get your information from. And this mystique that the white media is some bastion of information you need to know, that's just a carefully crafted and curated lie created by our enemies. They have conditioned you to think that what they put in front of you is the most important news of the day, that they carefully pore over the most pressing and relevant events and issues, sifting through the information, and at the end of this arduous process, they've found the jewels of information you need to know. At least, that's how they present themselves to you. But anyone unfortunate enough to have to watch the white media knows that's not what they do at all. What they show you is propaganda, full stop. It's a media product, produced, packaged, and presented to you no different than the latest episode of Law & Order or whatever hip-hop related podcast or cable show you like to watch. They decide what they want you to think about and what they want you to think of it. Then they put their people to work to find a subject or person that they can use as their in to push the line of propaganda at you. The stuff the white media shows you is rarely the most important news of the day. And even if it's something that's relevant to you, they always put a slant on it that makes it useful to them. You'll know when something is actually important because the white media will be doing their damnedest to dictate to you what you should think about it, to make sure you only get one side of the story, which is their lies, and then telling you that you should just go along with their conclusions. So no, I don't make it a point to discuss whatever the white media is talking about today because my job is to inform you, and that mission doesn't mean I take my cues from whatever the white media is saying should be front page news. I know where they get their ideas from, and it's not meant to inform or empower you. And of course, I also get a kick out of presenting you my crime reports. That was another subject I wanted to tackle regularly. Those of you who have been here for a while, you know that for years back, I used to do videos about white-on-white crime. Well, the racists at YouTube attacked the channel because of that, because I exposed and embarrassed them. So I renamed my segments and came at it even harder. But it's gratifying to have kept up this pace for the last 4 years, and it's rewarding to see just how many subjects I've been able to touch on. I finally feel like I've been addressing the subjects that I wanted to and doing it with the right level of frequency. One of the critiques that I received early on when I changed to this new format, and that I occasionally hear from people who have been listening to me for 10 years or more, is that they were very much used to and appreciative that I would do videos that were closer to 45 minutes or so. Well, that was part of the reason why I made the change in the first place. Quality of content is far more important than quantity of it. Yeah, that sounds a little strange considering that I've doubled the number of videos that I posted weekly, but it is what it is. What I do isn't meant to be background noise to your day, which for a lot of people is what the podcasts they listen to actually are, background noise. I want to make sure that when I'm talking about, you're listening to every word of it. It's more important to me that I have a video that's 20 minutes but is razor sharp as opposed to something that's, say, 45 minutes to an hour long when I feel that the point could have been made in, say, 15 minutes. 1,000 continuous postings. Through all kinds of adversity and problems you don't know, but the reason I'm here is because you are. I've been doing this a pretty long while. A lot of people have passed through this space, most are gone. The motivation that responsible people have to post their content is that they want to saturate the world in their worldview. In my case, I want to reach other black people who see this as more than politically oriented entertainment. Every once in a while, I see the occasional comment saying that my channel should be far larger than it is. Well, that's what happens when you get shadow banned. These racists who own places like YouTube, they use their algorithms to promote the messages they want people to see. Or at the very least, to promote people who are not a threat to the status quo. And then they have another algorithm that they weaponize against people whose content is a threat. That's the category that I and Brother Tariq and Tarian Rain and Lisa Cabrera, Chris Crazy House, Philip Scott, Vicky Dillard, and a select number of others fall into. I consider it an honor that they resort to these measures. It verifies that my message is the truth, and a grain of truth has more power than a mountain of lies. They can give these other people millions of views, but most of them are chumps who are never going to do anything. Millions of useless viewers may be good if you got an ego or you're trying to get a sponsorship from a big company. But if you're sick and tired of the racial status quo and you're wanting to provoke and inspire people, millions of viewers are a waste of time. White power understands that. The quality of people that you reach is far more important than the number of people who are reached. That's why when these white media networks and TV stations go to advertisers asking them for money, the main thing they talk about are the demographics of their viewership. Who are they reaching? Who is it that watches their network? A show with a large audience but the wrong demographics is worthless. A smaller audience, though, with the perfect demographics is gold. Consider that a long-winded way of saying that the people who choose to watch what you do are what makes it valuable. I consider myself not just lucky, but also blessed that so many of you have been with me for so long. I know it's not always easy, but it is what has to be done. I didn't do this for the sake of being famous. You don't do what I've done for 18 plus years because you're trying to get some attention for yourself. You've never seen me, and that's not important. It's not important who I am. It's important the message that I'm espousing. It's important the people who want to hear it, and hopefully the impact that it will have. There's a ton of people out there who are desperate to become Instagram famous or desperate to find some sort of YouTube show that they think that they can parlay into a white media deal. Issa Rae comes to mind. And for these people, the way that I do things, the way that the black media does things, actually for other people and not ourselves, they can't fathom that. That's the reason why every time you look up, these guys are trying to play the game. Let's bring Kamala Harris over so we can go ahead and talk about nothing with her. That's what a lot of these fools do. And that's the reason why they avoid the black media. We're not playing any games with anyone. And once again, when I say the black media, that means you. Why do you think it is that these guys are running scared whenever they see us show up? Why is it you think that they're terrified to even consider talking to us? Because of you. They're thinking to themselves that they're brilliantly dodging you, that they're brilliantly evading you, that they found some sort of sneaky, clever way to get away from your gaze and that you're not going to be able to see them or hear them. That as long as they don't actually have to engage with you, somehow they have escaped the reckoning. And you guys keep showing them time and again that they're wrong. You're the reason that this is happening. You're the reason the black media exists. You are the reason that this message resonates. You are the ones that they fear, and they should, because you're the ones who represent the change that they're terrified of. And they can't say that they're not scared. They're familiar with the black media. They've been confronted directly by a number of our members and by you. What do you think the reason is that they don't talk to you? Because of the fact that they're liars. They're terrified of being exposed on camera, but they don't seem to realize that just because we don't have them on the hot spot live on air doesn't mean that they've escaped being exposed. In fact, it means exactly the opposite. The more that they duck and dodge and run, the more that they prove themselves to be the moral cowards and the turn-faced tethers that we always said that they were. That's the lesson of 2024. Yours are the eyeballs and the minds that these people are trying to capture. You're the ones who they're trying to control. And when you decide that you're going to listen to the black media instead of listen to them, what you're doing is you're undermining them, you're weakening them. And sure, it may not be as dramatic as what the millionaires and billionaires are able to do for the likes of Charlie Kirk and others, but the reality is their movements are based on lies. It's astroturf. It's all an illusion. It doesn't exist. This one is based on reality, and reality always gets the last word. So, this is the 1000th moment of truth. As for the Sunday addresses, I haven't really been keeping count of those. I care only about getting the work done. And what I also care about is making sure that hopefully I'm giving you the news and information that you need from the perspective of a black person who's actually on your side. When I started posting videos 18 years ago, I said that the mission of the black media would be to take control of the social discourse in the black community and to elevate the debate. And that's what we've done. All of those hucksters and shucksters and shysters and fools, all the people who want to shuck and jive, those individuals found themselves run out, or at the very least, they have been forced to have to change what they said in order to have to match what the black media's been saying. We didn't have to water down or dumb down our discourse. They were forced to have to elevate theirs. And as we predicted, a lot of them couldn't do it, and they got lost in the shuffle, and that's exactly what's supposed to happen. We didn't want them to be around, and so many of them are not. If there's one thing that should have been learned from all of those left-wing mouthpieces being exposed as tools of the DNC, it's that white power believes in trying to buy influence because they don't have legitimacy. They don't actually have your support. The fact that we were able to come to you not because some bankroll funded what we do, but because we started off from modest beginnings and you gravitated to this message, that is the proof that we are legitimate. You are the proof. You weren't bought and paid for. There's no algorithm that brought you here. In fact, the algorithms are against what we do. But that doesn't matter because you're for it, and you're the ones who count. So let me once again thank you for having been here, for those who have been B1 from day one, as well as those who may have just discovered me this morning. I know I don't come off as modest, but I am truly humbled by your nearly 2 decades of support. There's no law that said you had to listen to me, or that you have to stick around. So make no mistake, I don't take you for granted. That would be an insult to you and our ancestors and all of our grandmaster teachers whom I've tried to honor with my admittedly imperfect efforts. I try to live up to my name, Black Truth. I've endeavored to deliver you the truth, not just as I see it, but as it truly is. I try to find things that I think are important today and that a little angel on my shoulder might tell me could be important down the line. I try to give you information with foresight, things that are not just important today, but also that I suspect that you'll be seeing in the future. Whatever contribution I've managed to make to any sort of discourse is in fact the result of your being here. When I honor you, that honors myself. Yes, it's difficult, yes, it's occasionally painful, and no, it's not always fun, but nothing worth having ever is. If there's something you want, the universe is going to test you. And the bigger the goal, the greater the test. Well, we've been tested, together, and proven. That's no small feat. So once again, I thank you for the last 18 years and for making this milestone possible. Here's to the next 1,000, or however many I'm blessed to produce. Thank you all, and be one.